Hey readers, I thought I'd just update you on my reading so far this month and what I need to do for the rest of the month. I'll talk about my nonfiction first and then my fiction reads. So, in terms of my project reading, I thought I was going to start off the year with The French and Indian War by Walter R. Borneman and Talking Back Native Women and the Making of the Early South by Alejandra Dubcovsky. But then I thought I have access to two books on the French and Indian War, otherwise known as the 7 Years' War, depending on if you are in talking about the American theater or the global conflict. And I might as well just listen to. I have access to both of them as ebooks or as audiobooks because such is the library, right? And so I listened to the first part of each of them, and it turns out that Borneman's book is an introduction for beginners, so it's more of a, not exactly a popular history, because I'm not sure that it's popular to study the French and Indian War, but it is written for not necessarily just for scholars, but it's kind of written more for a general audience, and it's focused on the American theater. As you can probably tell by the title, it's called the French and Indian War, not the 7 Years' War. And it doesn't really start with setting up the whole big picture of the geopolitical situation that led to the war, but Crucible of War by Fred Anderson does. It is a scholarly book, and it is very detailed, and it has a global focus as opposed to a focus on the American theater itself. And it is very focused on why the war happened and why it happened the way that it happened. And it's trying to treat the war not just as a prelude to the American Revolution, as most histories do, but treat it as its own kind of world war, because that's kind of what it was. If you look at the global conflict and not just the American theater. So it's not just looking at the American theater, it's looking at the entire conflict. And so it is a very long book. The audiobook is something like 30 hours long or something like that, or maybe more. It might be like 35 or something like that. And so I don't know. I would need to go look. But it's very detailed. It just throws you right into the deep water. It is not an introduction. So if that's what you're looking for, go with that one. If you were looking for more of an introduction, American theater-based book, go with Borneman's book. If you go with Anderson's book, do not get the audiobook. I am sticking with the audiobook because I have decided that I don't necessarily need a book about the entire global conflict. I don't necessarily need to know every single thing about the entire global conflict for the entire war. What I need is the global aspect of the geopolitical situation that led to the war. And then once the war starts, I'm going to switch over to Borneman's book and just focus on the American theater, because I'm doing a U.S. history project, not a global history project. So I don't necessarily and because it would be nice to read the whole Fred Anderson book, but I also don't have the budget to go and buy a bunch of ebooks or physical books, and I don't have the space to store physical books. A lot of them, I have like one small shelf in my bedroom. So, there we go. So I'm just going to read the first several chapters of Anderson's book. And right now I'm in chapter 3. And the problem is this week, I just haven't felt very motivated to slog through Anderson's book because it's not written well. It's just not. It's written by a fantastic researcher who is also not a fantastic writer. Borneman's book is written more like a college lecture. It is much easier to take lecture notes on. And so it kind of works as an audiobook, even though it's not ideal to listen to it instead of just read it with your eyeballs. You can kind of do it because he's like, okay, here's the 3 things you need to know about this. Here's the 5 things you need to know about that. And so you can kind of listen to it and just type along as if you were listening to a college lecture. It kind of works that way. Fred Anderson does not work that way. Do not get the audiobook. If you can. If you can get an ebook or a physical book, get that. So, yeah. And then the other thing is I need to find a Jamestown book. I have a couple on my list that I'm looking at or that I need to look at. But see, I would like at some point to do a guide to reading the colonial period. And I think for that, I would like to have an overview of Jamestown. And the 2 books that I read about Jamestown, one of them is about the people who were shipwrecked on the way to Jamestown, and the other one is a book about how the government in Jamestown changed after 1619. They're not really overviews of what the average person experienced in Jamestown over the course of however many decades. And I would kind of like a book like that. So I need to find a book like that and probably go back and read that. Between those 2 things with the the problems with the figuring out how to read about the French and Indian War and needing to go back and read about Jamestown, that is going to throw off my entire reading schedule for the year. So that's going to be interesting. And then, but that's all those are all the nonfiction books that I have to talk about. But as far as fiction books, I went to a library book sale, or library, not book sale, but like a fundraiser at an ice cream shop. And I have acquired a Star Trek book because I know that at some point during the year there is a Star Trek readathon of some sort. I don't remember what it's called. I don't remember what point in the year that is, but I figured that this could help me get started with a Star Trek readathon. I don't know anything about Star Trek really. I've seen the first few movies from, like the 80s or something like that, or whenever they came out. But I don't really know anything about Star Trek, so I figure this is called War Drums, the new novel by John Vornholt. And the idea is that there's this planet Selva, and there's a group of humans and a group of Klingons, and they hate each other, and the crew of the Starship Enterprise is trying to stop them from killing each other, basically, and there's some sort of secret on the planet that could potentially kill the Starship Enterprise crew. So, I don't know, it could be fun. And then I also finished the last 2 books of the Time Trader series by Andre Norton. And they were fun. They weren't... The thing is that... Excuse me. The sixth book does not anticipate climate change and the shift towards fascism that we're experiencing now. And there is a moral conflict in the sixth book that is made kind of awkward looking back on this novel, because the novel doesn't anticipate that happening when we're living. And so it's still a fun read, but it's a little bit of an awkward read too. And then the seventh book kind of, it's kind of interesting because it deals with an international team of people from Earth and their dynamic. But they go to a different planet, and so you've got all these different languages. You've got the different human languages, and you've got the different alien languages, and it really explores kind of concepts around language. And it also explores kind of the alien social structures, and but it doesn't, the book is so short, it doesn't have a lot of room to fully explore all of the concepts and all of the social structures and things that it's making very specific. It's putting all these specific details in there, and then it's not letting you like spend time really exploring all of those things in depth. So it's fun, but it doesn't feel fully fleshed out. And it kind of makes comments on that. Like the characters are commenting, oh, I wish we could fully explore this, but we don't have time. So the author is aware of this problem. It's kind of, but it's still fun. I'm still glad that I finished the series. And then I also read All Systems Red by Martha Wells. I had heard that the Murder Bot books were fun, and so I decided to read the first book, and it was fun. And I thought that the main character was quirky and likable, and the stakes were important, but the book still felt pretty upbeat. And the author did a good job of explaining what needed to be explained without it feeling too info dumpy. So yeah, I would continue in the series. I think my library has some ebooks or audiobooks or something like that. I'm not sure if they have the physical books, but they would be fun to get a hold of if I could get the physical books. That would be fun. But either way. Let's see. And then I've also been, you're gonna laugh, but like sometimes I get tired and I just want to listen to a book, but I don't necessarily have the focus to deal with anything new. Like I can't focus on a dense academic book, and I can't think of a new book that, a new novel or anything like that I would want to listen to. And so I just go back to an old standby. And so I've been listening to The Goblin Emperor again. And yeah, so I'm close to being done with that one again. Yeah, so anyway, those are all the books that I've been kind of working my way through this month so far. And I hope your reading month is going well. I hope your life is as good as it can be, given everything that's going on. And yeah, happy reading month, everyone. Take care.